Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeremy Dela Cruz, class of 2015 and 2019, and I serve as chair of the Asian Pacific Alumni of Notre Dame. And on behalf of the APA board, we're so glad you're joining us for today's event. I'd like to thank Rona Reodica, class of 2001, and former APA board member for being our featured guest speaker, our moderator, Grace Choi, class of 2003, my fellow panelist, Sophia Labrador, class of 2025, in addition to APA board members, APA anniversary committee members, alumni group board members, and members of the Alumni Association Board of Directors in attendance today. Before we begin today's interactive culinary conversation, we'd like to highlight our Asian Pacific alumni of Notre Dame community. If you are new to the APA, we are an official alumni group of the Notre Dame Alumni Association founded in October 1995 and dedicated to celebrating the wonderful alumni, parents, students, and friends with roots across Asia and the Pacific Islands. We do this through student engagement, alumni programming, and meaningful lifelong connections. If you'd like to get involved or learn more, you can reach us at apa.board@alumni.nd.edu. As we look ahead to APA's 30th anniversary year, we're focused on three major opportunities for community engagement. First, the anniversary itself will run from October 2025 through October 2026 for a full year of storytelling, programming, and reconnection. Additionally, mark your calendars. Reunion 26 from June 4th through 7th, 2026 will be our capstone gathering for APA's 30th anniversary and will be a joint celebration weekend with the Native American alumni of Notre Dame. Register today at reunion.nd.edu. And third, we are launching the APA Community Cookbook. This is a way for APA community members to share a special recipe and Notre Dame memory, something personal that connects food and storytelling. The submission link is in the chat if you'd like to contribute a recipe. And so we're so excited and we'd love for you to be a part of this historic anniversary year. Now, just some event reminders. So number one, as you see from Michelle's messages, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat by posting your tried and true Notre Dame introduction, name, graduation years, dorm, and majors. Additionally, submit a question in the chat if you would like for the panelists and the moderator. We may discuss it, time permitting. Now, feel free to contact us with any event ideas or ways to collaborate. We have our social media channels here on the screen. Additionally, remember to tag us on Instagram at APA of ND whenever you host any Lunar New Year or other Asian Pacific Islander events. Before we begin today, I want to offer a special thank you to everyone here with us live and to all who will watch today's recording. Your presence and support are what continue to strengthen APA's legacy. Lumpia and legacy reminds us that our history isn't abstract, it's personal. It's built from real people, real stories, and real flavors that have wrapped this community together across generations. Just as Lumpia is folded with care, our legacy has been shaped layer by layer by those who came before us. As we enter APA's 30th anniversary year, we continue to unwrap these stories, honoring the past while passing forward a recipe of belonging for those who follow. Thank you for being part of this journey and this community. Now in October, we celebrate Filipino American History Month, and we're grounding that celebration within the context of the Notre Dame family. For the APA community, this month is also about honoring the Filipino presence and contributions to the university, past and present, and reconnecting that broader history to the story of our Notre Dame family. Back in 1903, so taking a step back, a group of Filipino students traveled across the world to enroll at Notre Dame, becoming the first Asian university's history. After graduating, many returned to the Philippines as lawyers, engineers, and civic leaders. Together, they formed a community and set in motion the earliest roots of Asian Pacific Islander representation on campus. Their arrival was made possible by the Pensionado Act of 1903, which sponsored Filipino students to study in the U.S., and by 1938, roughly 14,000 Filipinos had come through the program, including around 60 to 70 at Notre Dame and at least 2 women at St. Mary's College. But of course, this legacy was born in a complicated moment in Filipino American history, emerging directly from the Spanish-American War, the Philippine-American War, and the onset of U.S. colonial rule. It's a story shaped by both pain and privilege, pain in the loss of sovereignty and privilege in the fact that pensionados were largely drawn from elite or highly educated families being prepared for colonial leadership. And yet, even within that complexity, these students built the first bridge between Asia and Notre Dame, planting the roots of the API presence that would continue to grow to this day. Now let me introduce you to someone special. This is Jose Eduardo Valdez y Diaz, class of 1906, Notre Dame's first Asian graduate. He arrived from Manila in 1903 and earned his law degree from Notre Dame Law School. What makes Jose's story come alive is that thanks to Notre Dame records and his U.S. passport application from 1924, we know many things about him. He was born on October 13, 1881, in the province of Samar in the Philippines. He was 5'6", with a high forehead, brown eyes, round chin, and brown complexion. To say his passport application was very thorough. He married Ana Tuason Gil de Sola in 1911 and had 7 children, one of whom also went to Notre Dame. You can also see that in these photos from the very first edition of the Dome Yearbook in 1906, that Jose wasn't alone at Notre Dame. There were other Filipino students who formed a community, organizing as the Philippine Government Students Club, which stands as the earliest recorded API student organization at Notre Dame, long before most cultural clubs existed, and the forerunner of today's FASO, the Filipino American Student Organization. This is where our story begins, with Filipino students shaping Notre Dame's history over a century ago. After earning his Notre Dame law degree, Jose Eduardo Valdez served in the cabinet of Benito Lagarda, the first resident commissioner of the Philippines in the U.S. colonial government. In 1908, the Notre Dame Scholastic featured Jose's appointment as a congressional delegate, citing him as the first of the Filipino government students to be graduated in America, further cementing his place not only in Notre Dame history, but also in Filipino American history as well. Jose's life becomes a powerful example of how early Asian Pacific Islander alumni advanced the ideals of God Country Notre Dame long before our community had a name, or a board, or an alumni network. And speaking of alumni network, Jose also appears in the historical record as attending the revival of the Alumni Association in June 1908, when then University President Father Kavanaugh reinstated the tradition of the annual alumni reunion, which continues to this day. Jose and other Filipino graduates eventually established the Notre Dame Club of the Philippines in 1924, which celebrated its 100th anniversary last year as the oldest Notre Dame club in Asia. It's truly amazing to think that from the very start of today's Notre Dame Alumni Association, an Asian graduate was already in the room. Jose's presence is an early reminder that our APA community has truly belonged in Notre Dame history from the very beginning. Now, for more than 120 years, Asian Pacific Islanders have contributed to Notre Dame's history through leadership, scholarship, and service, a legacy that began in 1906 with Jose Eduardo Valdez. This past May, the APA board launched the Valdez Impact Award to honor students who carry that same spirit of leadership and service forward. The award isn't just about honoring the first Asian graduate. Instead, the award recognizes the through line of courage, perseverance, and belonging that connects 1906 to today. Every API student who walks across the graduation stage is part of that legacy, and every alum who gives back ensures it continues. And so, with that history as our foundation, I'd like to invite my co-panelist Sophia to bring us into the present and share how the Filipino American community at Notre Dame continues to grow and evolve today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So for a bit of context, I was an Asian Studies minor on campus. I just graduated this past year, but I was able to research a topic under Asian Studies and create a capstone research paper. And so I chose to study the evolving presence of Filipino Americans on Notre Dame's campus. So a lot of my research overlaps with Jeremy's. So very excited to speak to you guys a bit about it today. I called my paper Mahal Kita Notre Dame, a bit of play on Love Thee Notre Dame. But my main methodology for this research project was going through old student publications like the Observer, the Scholastic, and then the yearbooks as well, looking at keywords like Filipino, Philippines, and FOSO and seeing what other students were saying about um, like Filipinos and the Filipino club on campus. And so I wanted to share three things, three pieces briefly. So the first thing I want to call out on this slide is this yearbook picture in the middle. This is from 1921. And this is a photo of the Manila Club, kind of the I guess, one of the is later children of the Philippine Government Students Club that Jeremy was talking about earlier, and then this later becoming, as we know now, FOSO. If you can see on there, I know it's very small text, but the Secretary Treasurer is Alfonso no Zobel, and he is actually one of the ancestors of the current head of the Notre Dame Club of the Philippines, which is really cool. But I wanted to highlight this because the original purpose, the early purpose of the club was very much inward facing, a community just for Filipinos. Um, then my next two callouts are the Fiestong clips that you can see at the top, Fiestong 3, the perfect way to renew Filipino sense of pride. And then the clip in the bottom left was for the first Fiestong in 1995. And we can see that the Filipino organization, which I guess at this point is now called FOSO, is more outward facing as opposed to community just for Filipinos. And then our last call out here is in the top right. If also, again, very, very small text, but this is from an ad in the Observer for 1998, which was, and if we want to go to the next slide, Jeremy. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I think my internet connection is a little unstable from 1998. And you can see that, it's not just Filipino people there at this FOSO event, it's everyone from the Notre Dame community. So I'll pass it back now to Jeremy and we can kind of begin the more conversation part of today's meeting.
Thanks, Sophia. So, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Grace Choi, class of 2003. Grace is a culinary scholar, educator, and founder of Larrabee, a technology platform that reimagines how people learn action-based skills. After Notre Dame, Grace trained at the French Culinary Institute in New York, cooked in award-winning restaurants in Manhattan and Italy, and later earned her doctorate in food studies from NYU. She has developed content for the Food Network and Cooking Channel, taught university courses on food and culture, and now leads Larrabee's mission to bring hands-on apprentice-style learning to modern education. Please give an APA welcome to Grace Choi.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Rona had reached out to me a couple months ago and asked if I might, participate in some APA reunion activities, which is such a delight. I think the last time we did an activity was during COVID with Teresa, who's here, and Jackie and Jane, who are also officers of FOSO. So we'll be doing more things in the future, which is very exciting. But since we're all here for Lumpia, I thought I would just dive in and give some intros. So starting with Rona. Um, Rona is our featured guest, class of 2001. She served on the APA board for 7 years as Director of Alumni Relations and as Intercultural Diversity Co-Commissioner for the ND Club of New York. A Fulbright Scholar and graduate of Notre Dame School of Architecture, she conducted research in Manila on housing and community development before continuing her public service work through the ND Puerto Rico program. Today, she serves as Associate Commissioner at New York City's Department of Housing Preservation and Development, where she oversees the design and construction of affordable housing throughout the city. Jeremy, who we just heard from, he graduated in the class of 2015 and 2019. He serves as chair of the APA board and sits on the Notre Dame Alumni Association board. He's also a Fulbright Scholar to Andorra and proud double donor. He currently serves as a senior compliance officer at Kingsview Partners in Chicago, helping oversee the firm's National Wealth Management Compliance Program. And Sophia, our third panelist, she graduated in 2025, as she mentioned. She was deeply involved in student life as a McGlynn Hall resident, campus tour guide, and proud member of FOSO. Her Asian Studies capstone, as you heard, explored the evolving Filipino American presence at Notre Dame, building on her own cultural roots. She now lives in Chicago and works as a technical consultant at Periveda. Okay, thank you so much for today's panelists. I would like to kick things off to Rona. Before we start cooking, Rona, I would love to, I call you the OG Lumpia Queen. My first experience at Notre Dame was during my senior year of high school for spring visitation weekend. Gina was my host mom. And the first activity that we did was Lumpia night. So I wanted to ask you, how did you come up with the idea of having Lumpia night on campus for FOSO?
Yeah, so I didn't know that you participated while you were still in high school.
Yeah.
But so Lumpia Night came about in 1998, and I love that one of Sophia's clips actually has that in the Observer, like promoting that event, because that was the first time that we had Lumpia Night. And the whole idea about it was like the year that I was president of FOSO was also the year of the centennial of Philippine independence. So I figured this is a big year. As FOSO, we have to do something, we have to represent. And so we came up with a lot of programming just to share our culture. And one of them was Lumpia Night. And I love that I'm seeing some of the other OGs of FOSO on this call. I think I saw Cyrus, and I have to give credit. I know she's not on the call, but hopefully she'll watch this afterwards. But Letty Bahuyo was president before me. And she really like inspired me to like run for president. And at the time, I'm like, I'm a sophomore, I can't do this. But she's like, no, you can do it. So I took the leap and I did it. And I have Mark Garzon, who served as an officer during my time. And it's also great to see like the other officers on this call who've kind of taken the helm and have done a lot for FOSO. So Lumpia Night started basically, and this is where my memory gets a little fuzzy, because I do have photos of us being in the basement of Walsh Hall. So I think what we did was we either prepped the ingredients in Walsh Hall, but I definitely remember that we had it at the CSC. And that's why you saw those photos earlier, which had Alfred Vargas, who's also on the call, and Eric Kilb. They were there at the very first Lumpia Night. And I had my brother go to my mom's house to get those photos. I was like, I need photos. Just look for people that look like they're rolling lumpia. And it's great. You could see Alfred, like, you know, he's in the meat. And that's how we cook, you know, like we're cooking with our hands, we're in it. But the whole idea of the Lumpia Night was to bring people together to share our culture. It wasn't necessarily just for Filipinos, right? But for Filipinos to learn how to cook lumpia if they didn't know, and if they didn't learn from their parents or their family, but also for us to share with non-Filipinos. And like what Sophia mentioned earlier, you know, you can see in the photos, most of the people were non-Filipino. And I loved that. Like during my time at Notre Dame, I was all about sharing our culture, because that's so much of who I am. So much of my identity is about being Filipino American.
That's awesome. Um, and I think what's interesting about dumplings, just before we kick things off, is that I think across cultures, making dumplings is always this communal activity, right? Everybody is taking one part of something, like whether it's chopping vegetables or mixing things or rolling things. Did you have any rules in place for Lumpia night? Like everybody had to be involved, or how did you come up with the idea of doing lumpia specifically versus something like adobo?
Yeah, great question. I think you said it, right? When you think about Filipino cuisine, I think lumpia is like that one food that is interactive, right? Like if we were to make other foods like chicken adobo or like sinigang, those tend to be like one cook in the kitchen. But with lumpia, it's like, you make the filling and everybody can roll. They can roll their own lumpia. And I remember there were like all different shapes and sizes of lumpia, rolled tight, rolled loose. Like we had everything. And that's the fun of it. It's like learning how to do it, but also the conversations that come out when you're cooking, and for people to be able to like roll their lumpia and catch up on something. And even now, like when you think about passing on recipes, it's very much like passing on tradition. And a lot of like what Jeremy and Sophia talked about with tracing that history, like Filipino history at Notre Dame, you know like by cooking food, that's essentially us passing on history to our classmates, to our friends, to our family. So it's fun, and it is really like one of the interactive types of food that you can cook.
Yeah.
I remembered, like, even on Crazy Rich Asians, right? They had like they all came together to the table and they were making dumplings together, right? And just having conversations. So for us, I think that's what lumpia is.
Yeah, it's a great unifier.
Mhm.
So what do we have? You're starting off with lumpia Shanghai first?
Yes. So we sent two recipes. One is lumpiang Shanghai, which typically will have meat. And then the other is vegetarian if folks don't eat meat. There's also the vegetable version. So I was going to start off first with lumpiang Shanghai. This is just ground pork, but people can substitute for like ground chicken, ground beef, whatever your pleasure is. I had already prepped all of the ingredients. So here we have um, carrots, and bear with me because this is my first time doing this. I'm like, which camera am I pointing to? Yeah, carrots. It's a very simple recipe too. This is my mom's recipe. For crunch, she likes to put celery and chestnuts, water chestnuts. This I put as optional. It's just raisins. If you like a little sweetness to it. And then you're just, for your umami, you have a little bit of soy sauce, and then your basic seasonings, onion powder, garlic powder, salt and pepper. You can also add an egg as the binder. So this one is really simple. You just kind of dump everything in the bowl. And if you're following, I hope you chopped everything ahead of time to save. It's not, if not, you can rewatch this, but it's so simple. You just literally dump everything in the bowl, and you prepped, and you've chopped it like it's hot, according to the recipe. And then this is where, depending on how you want to do it, you can either take a little spoon and kind of, mix it all in. I'm going to add the egg actually for the binder. I know that wasn't on the recipe, but you can add that as well. You can either just mix. You can use your hands. I prefer to use my hands because this, I like to get into it, and kind of make sure that all the ingredients are like equally distributed on the meat. But for today, oh, and people use gloves. Yeah, I've seen people like, if you don't want to get your hands dirty, you can use gloves, but so this is, like I said, very basic recipe, simple, and then we can get into how to roll it, because really it's the rolling part sometimes that I think is a little bit more difficult. But anyway, you mix this, make sure it's well mixed, and then you just we can let this sit for now, and then we'll roll.
Do you have
later
to
on.
let it sit for a little bit to let the flavors melt, or can you fill and roll right away?
I think you can roll right away. I'm actually gonna put this glove on real quick because I don't. This is my first time using a glove. So sanitary. And usually, like this is how I'm like getting into it. Like this is how my mom does it too. Like she's into it. She doesn't use gloves though.
Did she
Old school.
teach you how to make lumpia when you were a child?
She did. Well, she was a cook in our family. She cooked everything. And she would always cook. And I think like when we were teenagers, I don't think we necessarily took the time to learn how to cook. It wasn't until my adulthood where I was like, oh, how do you make this? How do you make that? Like when I left home and I'm like, oh, I'm homesick. I want to make, lumpia or adobo or whatever. And that's when I really started paying attention to recipes. So it really wasn't until my adulthood, but getting a recipe from your Filipino mother, it's so difficult because they don't measure anything. They just kind of cook with their heart and they taste a lot during, along the way. So when I asked her to like confirm her recipe for this, it was like such a cryptic text. And I had to I had to quantify everything into the recipe. But most of our recipes usually are never quantified. It's basically like, you smell it. Does it smell good? You kind of proportion. Everything is proportioned too, right? Like the ingredients have to be all like well proportioned. That's something we learned in architecture school, right, Mark? I mean, everything is really about proportion. You don't want too much of one ingredient to overpower the meat, right? Because really the star of the show is the meat.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Two quick things. I'm going to be posing some audience directed questions. I did one already. So please feel free to comment. We can talk about things if there's like if somebody has like a question or a comment that they want to make. The second thing I wanted to mention was that while you were getting ready to roll, Rona, I forgot to mention that I was actually an active member of FOSO, like a lot of like a lot of people who went to Notre Dame. I'm Korean, but FOSO was very, very welcoming. I think that was one of the magical things about going to Notre Dame and being a minority and also being able to be a participant in all these other minority groups. And one of the things that I remember about FOSO, one of the many things is like going on retreats and waking up in the morning and having garlic rice and like Vienna sausages and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people share that experience. And while you're getting everything ready for the next version of Lumpia, I thought I might highlight Eric Kilb here. He was in one of the pictures from like one of the first Lumpia nights. Eric, I actually have a question for you, Eric. So you were super involved in AAPI student organizations as a student and also attended the first Lumpia night. Can you share your experience as a non-Asian participating in these events? And did you feel a sense of inclusion? It's kind of a leading question, but.
Awesome. Thanks so much. This is so cool seeing some old friendly faces here. Kind of I guess I had some moments to think about it, right? So, and I remember Rona the first time I ever saw her, but I guess my journey with FOSTA was like started before I actually joined the club. As most people, everybody who's probably on this that knows me already knows that I come from hometown Virginia Beach, Virginia, which has a very big Filipino population. So very diverse. The high school that I went to, it seemed like it was, a third white, a third black, a third Filipino, because of the big Filipino presence there in the culture. So I remember after my first year at Notre Dame, the summer hanging out with all my Filipino friends all summer long, and they were all very involved in their university and their Filipino clubs at different schools around Virginia. And I remember one night talking to my friends, Edward, Stefano, and Erwin, and they were just like, "Hey, you got to just join the Filipino club," because I was talking about how it's an interesting environment. It wasn't Virginia Beach, where I came from, and so, I guess 1997, when Rona was president, that activities night in the Jack, I was walking around looking for, okay, where's the Filipino club? And then I remember seeing Rona. She's standing in front of the table, and from probably like 20 feet away, I'm like, I'm joining. And she was like, come on over. And I think that was the kickoff of one of the sayings that was like, you don't have to be Filipino to be in FASO. But I got really involved in it. And like you said, Grace, just everybody's super welcoming. And I see a bunch of people on here like, Mark, Alfred, Gina, Dennis, Kim, who were all, good friends back then. And I even just like got to see Gina like a couple weeks ago at one of the games, and I hadn't seen her since, 2000. I saw Rona a bunch of times randomly on campus when I was visiting for football games and stuff.
In the
Um,
bookstore, right?
yeah, and it
Right.
was yeah, right around the bookstore. But I really got kicked off, and I got more involved. I went to all the meetings. I went to different performances and engagements. I danced the Tininkling at Fiestong. I'm wearing my Fiestong Filipino 4 t-shirt from the
Wow.
Centennial. So I have one of
That's
my parting gifts when I was dancing in my last Asian Allure. They were looking for a barong that could fit me, and so I think Malin's parents were coming up from Texas, and they got an extra large barong, and they gave it to me. So I still have that, and I have my little plaque that I got. Plaque that I got at the end of my time there with my little ribbon, my perfect attendance, a
Oh my
ribbon that
gosh.
Gina and Sophia gave me because I was always the one at the dance practices saying, "We're not on time, we're not on time." But I used to Grace, everybody's super, and they were like, "It's Filipino time." I'm like, "I know, but I have things to do." And I got meetings to go to and group work, and so I was like, I get it. I grew up around Filipinos, but let's get on time. So they gave me a perfect attendance award, and I think it was cool just being. I saw friends, one of my great friends here in the DC area, one of my old roommates, who said, "Oh, I knew Eric before I even knew him because he saw me dancing in Asian Allure, and he was like, who's this tall, like 6'4" white guy, dancing the Thin Inkling up there with everybody?" And it was just really cool. And like, Grace said, you're Korean. And I was in the Korean Student Association. I was in the Vietnamese Student Association. Alfred was president of, AAA at the time. So we were all like, in each other's groups, learning about the different cultures and participating in. I think it was great. And it's still a story that I tell, with friends here when people were like, "Oh, you'll never guess Eric, what he did." So it's awesome. I love it.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Rona, going back to you, so you have the ingredients for the next lumpia?
I do. I was just reminiscing as Eric was talking about dancing Tinikling during that fiesta. That was the centennial celebration. We had also moved it from La Fortune Ballroom, where it traditionally was held, to a bigger venue, to the Steppen Center. And I think that particular Tinikling, we had like 3 or 4 non-Filipinos dancing Tinikling. We had like a Latina, Felicia Marquez, who's Black, Eric, who's white. I mean, it was just amazing. Like they learned. I mean, tinikling is not easy, right? I mean, if you don't know what tinikling is, you're dancing literally in between sticks that someone's like pounding together. So you have to learn the beat. But it was just amazing to see them embrace our culture and to perform in front of like hundreds of people. So yes, this is the next version of lumpia. This is if you don't like meat, or you can add meat. I'm a carnivore, so I am going to add meat to this. But if you don't, this is mainly vegetable. So we have bean sprouts. And I think there was some questions on like which bean sprouts to use. I just grabbed these yesterday. Apparently there's like different kinds of bean sprouts, but like mung bean sprouts is really what I use. And then you've got some green beans, some chopped carrots. We have, again, for the crunch, we have our chestnuts, water chestnuts, and a little bit of celery. And my mom keeps saying, don't put too much celery because it can be overpowering. And then some garlic onions, that's pretty staple, some green onions, your soy sauce, and then your seasoning. So for this one, I think I'm going to move over to the stove and just quickly show like how to saute. And I'm going to hope that my smoke alarm doesn't go off, because I have a tiny apartment and I'm not turning on my exhaust. So, oh, and Grace, I never used to do this. In the last cooking show, you did this. Like you would put your hand on top of the pan, and I don't know why. Like growing up in cooking, I never did that, and I'm like, what's Grace doing? And I realized, I think I usually just always drop things in the pan to see if it's hot enough.
Mm-hmm. When I was in culinary school, we used to have to actually tap the pan to see if it was hot enough. I mean, you can't do that if there's oil in there, obviously, or anything. But yeah, just to like if we tap the pan with our finger just to see. So it's pretty rough.
Oh, interesting.
Lots of burns. So you saute. So why do you saute the vegetables in this version as opposed to sauteing the vegetables in the first version?
Well, it's just the way, I guess, the way with the recipe. This you would use just raw because everything is raw.
Uh-huh.
The important thing to remember is when you fry lumpia in Shanghai, your oil can't be too hot because what'll happen is your wrapper will burn, but then your meat inside will still be raw.
Mm-hmm.
Different from this version where the inside is already cooked and all you have to do is brown the wrapper.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm also seeing that the vegetables themselves are kind of water heavy, like the bean sprouts contain a lot of water and they'll shrink down a lot. I think I can't remember what other the green beans. Yeah, that's another one that contains a lot of liquid. So you probably want to extract as much liquid from that as possible.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Hmm.
I think
Excellent.
a little bit of like the order too, just understanding like which vegetables take longer to cook is important. So I'm gonna put I always start off with like your typical, onions. Where's my onions? Onions and garlic. That's like staple for all Filipino cooking, I feel. Um, and then I'm going to start first with the green beans and the carrots because that takes a little bit longer to cook. And because I want my water chestnuts and my celery to still be crunchy, I'm going to put those later. And then I'm going to finally add the bean sprouts, which do not take a long time to cook. And you want these to be crunchy. So this is like what you would add at the very end. So let's see.
Okay. While you're sauteing, and before we start rolling, I thought I would ask a couple questions to Jeremy and Sophia, if that's okay right now. All right. So Jeremy, you've led APA's efforts to uncover and preserve the stories of early Asian Pacific Islander alumni and students. What moment in that research has resonated with you the most personally?
Yeah, I would say that, what's resonated with me the most has definitely been this concept of remembering. I think both from a personal level, but also as a community level, it's really inspiring to read about these early Filipino students at Notre Dame to tell their stories and oftentimes to speak their names, right? Because who would have thought that 120 years later, we'll still be talking about Jose Eduardo Valdez and the early Filipino students. So I think it's really important to continue passing on those, stories, recipes too, with the newer generation so that we can always remember as a community what those folks have brought us to.
Piggybacking on that, Sophia, since you just graduated from Notre Dame, um, I know that Lumpia night was not a thing, right, when you were on campus?
No, yeah, Faso did not have Lumpia night, which I'm super disappointed about now upon like hearing about it. So I'm gonna have to, yeah, text some of the current board members and tell them to bring it back because I would have loved to participate in that.
What were
It's like,
some of the like community building activities that you had while you were on campus? And in your
yeah.
memory, was it as inclusive? Because a lot of us are of this specific generation. Was it as inclusive as what we experienced?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of my favorites, well, we always had the classic like Hollow Halloween and our like big general meetings for everyone where we brought food. My favorite was, and I don't know when this started, but the Capamelia bonfire when everyone in FOSO or who had like joined FOSO, it'd usually be around this time of year, honestly, before fall break. Everyone's invited and everyone's sorted into a family. And then the upperclassmen are like the parents, and then the underclassmen are the children. And that was always my favorite because I remember my first bonfire. That was like my first introduction to everyone, and I was so scared as a freshman of upperclassmen. And so learning and like knowing people through FOSO honestly like made my whole experience as a freshman being able to have like those people and role models to look up to. But yeah, about the like I guess inclusivity, definitely I think that was more apparent for sure during like Asian Alert and Fiestang. Again, yeah, talking about the tinikling, like tinikling is so hard, and because of that, anyone can kind of bond over learning that. And yeah, so we had like the Filipino kids, but also everyone from like all the other Asian clubs and non-Asian people. And it was like some dance practice is so much fun. It's just like no one cares like what background you are, you know, we're there to dance, we're there to have fun and like put on a show. So definitely it was great and very inclusive towards everyone.
Yeah, I thought Benisuan was really hard too. I found that to be very challenging. Um,
Yes.
and I hear you on the upperclassmen thing. This is reminding me, I was very intimidated of Rona. Rona, I never told you this, but so when she reached out to me and she's like, "Hey Grace," like a couple years ago, she's like, "Do you want to be involved in this APA event?" I was like, "Rona knows me? What?" Um, but yeah, one thing I do remember is I'm not sure if FAFSA still does that, but big sister, big brother, little brother, or is I can't remember what the name. Do you remember
Program.
what was that called, Myrna?
Ate Kuya. So like Ate and Kuya is like what you would call like a big brother or big sister.
Yeah. What?
Paired like an upperclassman with like an underclassman, like a freshman.
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, we only have the like families, not like specific pairings.
Yeah, I do remember those pairings. So Rona, how's the sauteing going?
Oh, so I'm done. So it's
Okay.
very quick because remember it's vegetables,
Looks
right?
delicious.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you season the fillings as you go?
Yeah, I added the soy sauce and the different powder, you know, onion, same thing, onion powder, garlic powder, salt and pepper. I mean, again, it's a very simple recipe. And I don't know if you noticed, but once I dumped the bean sprouts in, like shortly after, I turn off the heat because remember, your pan is still going to be hot and it's going to keep cooking. And the goal is to have your not to overcook the vegetables. You want it to be a little bit crispy. So once you're done with this, if you have like a colander or something, you could drain this because to your point, Grace, you have to have like dry ingredients. Otherwise, it kind of messes up the lumpia wrapper. So if you have like a colander, you can dump all of this into a colander and just let it drain, right? This actually doesn't have as much liquid. If you were to add the beef, it probably would, right? So you can just, like you can see here, surprisingly, there's not too much liquid. So you would let this drain for a little bit. And you also have to cool this, right? So it should be cool before you start rolling.
So while that's cooling, actually, my other question is, at what point should you start preheating your oil?
Ah, good question. Like at what point? I guess.
Yeah, like
Well,
how much time do you give your oil to heat up?
that's a great question because I'm a very, like I said, a rustic cook. I don't measure. I don't time very much. I don't have the thermometer. Um, I kind of just let the oil warm up, and I'll drop a spring roll in there to see if you know how much it sizzles, and that's how I determine whether or not the oil is hot enough. There's probably a more scientific answer to that, Grace. I don't know if you know. I'm
It
sure you.
depends. Yeah, it totally depends on it totally depends on what equipment you have. If you have like a thin aluminum pan, if you have a gas range, if you have an induction range, so there are a lot of determining factors. How much oil you're putting in, one person asked, how many inches of oil should you have? And I just said 2 inches just to be safe, but I guess it depends on like how deep your pan is. So I think like at least 5 minutes is always a safe bet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too it varies like how much oil people will use. Some people like to submerge. Some people don't like to put too much, and they'll like just flip it.
Yeah. I guess like a minimum of 1 inch, right? Might be good.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're
minimum 1 or 2.
1 or 2. Okay. Are you preheating oil right now? I'm like looking
So
at your pot situation.
I'm not because
Oh, because of the range, because of the fire alarm.
Let's roll first, and
Okay.
then just quickly. So this was a lot of questions about like what kind of wrapper to get. We've always used, growing up, we always used the square one that looked like this. My mom always told me, don't get the round ones because the round ones always rip. So I don't know, I'm sure not, but we always use this, anything that's square. And so you have your lumpia wrapper. It'll come all stuck together, right? So you're gonna want to, oh yeah, this is another brand, but the idea is that it should be square. Now, when you get the pack, they're all gonna be together, so you have to kind of separate them out because it's like little crepe sheets, right? So you kind of just separate them out one by one. And the other thing too is sometimes depending on how fast you roll, the wrapper can get dry very quickly. So I try to just put a little slightly damp, not too damp because the water also messes up the wrapper. Just to
too
cover
damp, it'll get gloppy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what do we want to roll first?
Lumpia Shanghai, please.
Hi. Okay. So you've got your wrapper like this. Just take a spoon. And you want to just well, the other thing too is I know people will test this. So you would test this, cook it, and see how it tastes, and then you add flavor if it's too bland, right? But usually we do a taste test first. But I'm going to assume that this tastes okay.
So you
So
make like a mini meatball and you pan fry it. Is that how you test it?
Mm-hmm. And then if you like the taste or not, this is where you got to get in there with your hands, because now, and this is where I say you can't be dainty. You have to use like all 10 fingers in order to wrap it nicely. And the trick is to really even out the meat so that one side is not too thin, one side's not too thick, because then that'll throw off your lumpia, right? So you see I've kind of rolled it out in like this long, like a little snake.
Is there how much space is there between the end of the lumpia and like the bottom of the wrapper? Is it like an inch?
An inch.
Yeah. Okay.
Like an inch. So there's also different ways that people will wrap. Like this is because I feel like this is the easiest and the quickest way. I'll usually lay it out this way. That way, all you have to do is take it, and then again, notice I'm using like all 10 fingers. I'm not like rolling with my pinky up, I'm not like bougie and just kind of doing this, right? I'm all in it. And then you kind of tighten it up, because the secret too is you gotta make it tight. And this allows you to move the meat around, like if it's not even. And then you just kind of keep going. And then you have your egg wash, right? Or you can use water too. If you don't have egg, people my mom likes to use egg wash. If you don't have an egg, water works just as fine. But the idea is to just use this little egg wash and just scramble this a little. Then you dip your finger. You kind of seal it like back in the days when we had envelopes that we had to seal with water. Just kind of do that. And once you got enough egg wash, that should seal the deal, right? So you kind of end up with a big lumpia that looks like this. And you can keep rolling it, and then you can cut this depending on size. If you love lumpia, keep it like this and eat the whole thing. People usually cut it into 3 pieces. That's one way to roll. I've seen others also roll where they keep the wrapper like a diamond, which I don't use this often because I feel like it's not as efficient, because they'll roll. It's basically you're having one. If you do it this way, you're making one lumpia. I like it this way because then you're making at least 2 or even 3, even though the size varies. But I've seen people do it where you lay, instead of having it be like a square, you kind of turn it around. So now it's a diamond. And then if you were to still scoop, little tablespoon of meat in there, you would put it, you would line it up where the edges are and kind of use that. And you do the same thing. You're evening it out. But the difference here, right? So that's kind of even. The difference here is, let's see, actually, I think I move it down a little, is when you now take, you flip it, and then you're doing the same thing. You're making it nice and tight. But then here, when it cut, now you have edges, right? So now you have to fold your edges. And what I like to remember is, again, channeling my architecture background, 90-degree angles. That's the only time I get technical with cooking. It's like you kind of want that 90-degree angle, because sometimes people will fold this over too much like this. I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you roll it, it just, I don't know. I think it's a cleaner way if you have these 90-degree angles. And once you set that up, you just kind of keep rolling. And don't forget your egg wash, like you're sealing your old school envelopes. And then you just keep rolling. So this is another way, right? But this makes one lumpia. I mean, it's a decent size. But that's another way.
So when you say that one long lumpia can make 2 or 3, do you cut it after the fact or before you fry?
I cut it beforehand.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I've heard too is it's also good. I mean, if you want to freeze it a little bit, like put it back in the freezer for a little bit so that it gets a little hard before you cut it. I've heard people, they like doing that too. But either way, you just kind of cut. And then now you've got 3 lumpia, right? So, and then just real quick, let's roll a vegetable one. I pre-prepped some of the vegetable ones. So this is already cooled off. And you gotta love these. I just recently discovered, it's like the hair.
Oh,
It's like a hair,
like a hair, like a shower hair thing.
shower cap for
Shower
food.
cap. Yeah, it's hysterical.
This is like the best thing ever, instead of like dealing with saran wrap. So for the vegetable one, and here you can see, again, I'm a carnivore, so I added meat to mine. So here you can see, right, it's a mixture of the vegetables and some ground beef. This I drained, and this is the same thing. You're gonna want to position your wrapper like a diamond, and then you don't want to put too much, because if you put too much, that tends to rip the wrapper. So maybe just a little bit.
And this filling is looser than the meat filling, or the other filling, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this is loose, right? The same concept where you kind of find your corners, your side corners, and you want to position it so it's like a little bit underneath those corners. And then the same thing here, you fold it over. You got to use all 10 fingers to make it tight, because it is loose filling. That's where, like, sometimes, it's like the filling tries to come out from the sides. And I feel like the sides are really the most important part, because when you're frying, which I did this morning, one of them broke. So then all the filling just kind of gets into the oil and starts burning. So once you kind of pull it a little tight, I like to pinch it and then fold, right? And there's my 90-degree angle. And then I pinch here and then fold. And then you want to make sure that that's intact, and then do your egg wash again to seal it. And then you just roll. And like as you're rolling, right, I'm trying to keep it as tight as I can. And you see here, see it's already starting to rip. I don't know if you could see that, but you kind of hope that stays. And then that's how you get a lumpia.
Oh, beautiful. So you could not do like the square version with like a loose filling, because like the filling just like might come out of the sides when you're frying?
Exactly. Yeah, we usually don't, because you need the sides to fold over. And like you'll see here, see if you get that, not if you do the 90-degree angle, you see how those corners kind of look nice and crisp.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I love both versions. One of the things that I do love about the long lumpia is that you get, when you fry it, you get like the caramelized meat on either side of the lumpia, you know what I mean? Which is really so good.
Yes.
So Jeremy, we're at 4:09. How are we doing on time? I know that we said that this is going to go until 4.
Yeah, so I think we are, a little above time, but if I know folks still have some questions in the chat. I know Joyce has a question around Rona. Is there a rough amount of number of servings that the recipes that we shared serve?
Oh, good question. So I was trying to do it. So I don't like waste, right? Every time I cook, I'm like, I'm either using the whole package or the whole carrot or the whole bag of bean sprouts. Otherwise, it stays in the fridge and then you forget about it and it goes bad. I think with this recipe, depending on how much filling you put, so each, like this one has typically like 25 pieces, right? For the wrapper. You should be able to make 25 lumpia with the recipe, I think. And again, that's depending on how much filling you put in your wrapper. But I think you can make all 25. Because if you don't, then you have like 5 wrappers left over, and what are you going to do with that? So I would say what I usually do is, as I'm getting closer to the end, I try to ration it out so that it makes all 25 lumpia. And we're out of time, so I don't think we'll get to frying, but Grace, I think you answered probably what one of the more important questions is, how much oil to put in. And the important thing is you don't want it too hot if you're doing the Shanghai version, like I said, and and then you want to just continue to like move it around so that all sides get brown. If you're not putting too much oil, because I know it takes up a lot of oil, but if you don't want to use too much, you just kind of turn it around once each side is brown. And that should be good. So I fried some earlier today.
Ooh.
And is what the Shanghai would look like. So I think what you said, Grace, like the caramelized edges, right? You can kind of, I don't know if you can hear, it's still crispy.
Crispy.
And the trick is, when you remove it from the oil, you want to either put it on a plate with a napkin to soak up the oil, or what I like to do is you use like a cooling rack and you just like spread it out, and you try to have it like have its own space. You don't want to bunch it up, because then the skin with the moisture, because of the heat, tends to like mess up the crispiness of the lumpia. So spread it out a little bit. We put 2 different types of dipping sauce, or 3 different types of dipping sauce. I think I have 2 of them here. One is this banana ketchup, which was back on the market for all the Filipinos. It was off the market for a while. Now it's back on the shelves. And that's what it looks like. It's called Jeffran banana ketchup. They have a spicy version. And then there's this vinegar, which I like to use the vinegar. It's a spicy vinegar for the vegetable version, because it gives it a nice little kick. You want to find this brand, and it's got all the spices floating under.
I'm jealous of your kids. I have 2 questions. So when you're frying, about how many would you put into the pan? You don't want to overcrowd it, right? Because then it'll drop the temperature of the oil but you also don't want to do too few because then you'll just be cooking forever. So how would you ration out like how many you put in the pan at once?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what you said. Like you don't want to put too much because then if you're crowding it, like keep in mind like like all sides have to get cooked, right? And you want to I like to move it around. I have this thing that I use a lot, like when I'm frying. I got this at Chinatown. This is great because you kind of swirl it around, and then when it's ready, you can just scoop it up and it drains all of the oil, right? But the idea is to have enough space so that you can move it around and flip it. Because remember, you have to, if you don't put too much oil, you have to flip the spring roll. So you want to have enough space to do that.
And how do you know it's done? When it's golden brown all around?
Yeah, like when it's golden brown, pretty much. I think maybe 5 to 7 minutes, I think, if you're doing the Shanghai version, because again, the meat inside is raw. For the vegetable one, maybe like 5 minutes, just depends on how hot your oil is, and how quickly it takes for the wrapper to brown.
Yeah. And if your wrapper starts to brown too quickly, then definitely turn down the temperature of the oil. One thing that you can do is gently swirl the oil so that it cools down a little bit more. We did have one other question. Is there a non-fried Filipino lumpia recipe?
We like fried foods as Filipinos. So I'm going to say a Filipino would not have lumpia that's not fried. No, but there is a version where, I mean, I haven't tried it yet. I think I'm going to try it after the show, where I use the air fryer for a lot of things too nowadays because it's a very quick way to cook. I've heard that you can put lumpia in an air fryer. So maybe try that. But if you're going to try that, I would just spray some oil on it, so that it gets that crisp. And then there is a version called lumpiang sariwa, which does not include frying. It's really just all vegetables, and the wrapper is like almost like an egg crepe that they make, and then they yeah, that version doesn't include frying. Healthy.
Excellent. Yeah. I will say that the air fryer would be excellent for reheating lumpia, right? Because it just like extracts a lot of oil when you put it on and it like heats it up really nicely. And it's, yeah, I use my air fryer more than I use our microwave.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, does anybody have any other questions about cooking or anything else that we can direct to Sophia or Jeremy or Rona? No? Okay, well, Jeremy, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, well, I wanted to thank everyone again, first and foremost to Rona for showing us how to make lumpia, for Grace for steering today's conversation, my co-panelist Sophia, in addition to Eric, and also in addition to you, the audience, right? I think today was such an engaging, interactive culinary conversation. And what we learned today is that much like lumpia, our history is meant to be unwrapped, meant to be shared and passed along to the next generation. So with that, take care, go Irish, and that's a wrap.